Yo, what's going on, Dragon Ballers? Welcome back to another video. In today's video, I'm going to go over the Frieza swap deck profile that I showed patrons on Monday on the Patreon. If you guys want to get up to date with the Patreon, follow some of my competitive content. Right now, I'm rolling out the color competitive analyses for the Set 21 Wild Resurgence archetypes, as well as some Set 21 deck profiles just a bit earlier for supporters. If you want to be up to date with that, go down the link in the description and feel free to sign up. But yeah, we're going over the deck that I profiled on Monday, which is the yellow Frieza swap deck, and this deck actually was surprisingly impressive upon testing. I wasn't so fond of it in the initial archetype overview I did a couple weeks ago. I thought that the Z energy costs were a bit too costly. The swap chain, while consistent, was a bit unimpressive, but now that I've played the deck more, I've actually got some much higher hopes for it. I don't think it really topples any of the current yellow decks, but of course we are going to be getting a ban list for Wild Resurgence probably a couple weeks before that set releases. So if some of these yellow decks do see some hits, that might, leave room for this deck to kind of step up. So if that happens, I can definitely see this deck being a pretty good one. We're gonna go over the list in today's video. If you guys are new, make sure to subscribe, hit that bell so you never miss a video, and let's get started, of course, with our leader. So we're able to awaken early if we activate swap. What's interesting here is that the auto to awaken is going to be a draw 2 versus the regular awaken being an untap 1 draw 1. I typically always just use the auto. The only times I typically use the regular awaken is if like I'm going second against an aggro deck and get pushed down really fast in life. The cool thing about this leader on awaken, or even just regularly, is that you don't have to attack to generate hand advantage, which is really cool. You're not necessarily playing a super stally deck to where you don't want to attack a ton. Like, you don't benefit too much out of leaving your opponent at 8 life a lot of the time. But if there is like a key turn where you can maybe stall your opponent's opportunity to go to 4 life so they can't super combo, and then like they put less pressure on you the next turn because of that, that is a really good thing to keep in mind. However, the cool thing here with the awaken is that you can use the unawaken activate main to search top 5 and add a card, and then use your awaken leader's auto to draw another card. And it's a really classic ability of a lot of powerful leaders in the past, of being able to generate hand advantage on both the unawakened and awakened side on the awakening turn. It's really powerful. All right, let's take a look at the main board. We have 4 copies of Return of the Army of Terror. So this is a deck searcher for any Frieza with swap, as well as a pseudo Sensubine, giving us 5k defensively. Now that part is honestly a little bit awkward in a yellow deck because yellow is just so reliant on floodgates. And I should mention too, this is a 54 card list. I'll talk about some points where we can maybe shave on some ratios. I probably wouldn't shave on Return of the Army of Terror because it searches anything in your deck that you want and your leader can grab it. But yeah, the plus 5k is like a little bit awkward because it's not often, at least when I'm playing yellow decks, I want to be getting into like combo battles with people, because like against red specifically, and maybe even like the blue Gohan superhero deck, they're always going to combo higher than you just by the nature of what they're doing. So yeah, the plus 5k is like pretty cool when you're on your Z leader, because then you're 25k and then it's just really hard for your opponent to deal damage. So that's like the only time I'm typically using the Sensubine effect, unless I really have to on my regular awakened side. Anyways, though, going into the swap chain, 4 copies of the 1-drop, which is also grabbable by another X card we'll see later on. We have 3 copies of Frieza Overflowing with Confidence and 3 copies of Frieza Cold-Hearted Behavior. Both of these are super good. I was really judgmental about this deck's ability to make Z energy when I first read the cards and saw the crazy Z deck costs. However, with Overflowing Confidence and the leader's Awaken Auto, you do make Z energy rather well. Not combined, because if you combo 2 cards, obviously you can only Z charge 1. So you want to attack with like a different Frieza, use your leader's auto, and then attack with Overflowing Confidence to make 2 Z energy in 1 turn. Cold-Hearted Behavior, also really good. Essentially lets you KO active mode cards. You tap them and then KO them. So the tapping is great because it procs other effects in your deck, but also the fact that active mode, like pesky 1-drops or even like aggressive 4-drops that maybe somehow end up in active mode, they are not totally safe like they would be against a lot of other yellow decks. Really good stuff. All right, now we have our 5-drops that the 3-drops swap into. We have 3 copies of Goku vs. Golden Frieza Spirit Clash. Now, this is one that I could see going to 2 copies of. It really just depends on like how many prominent barrier threats there are in the format that you need to be dealing with. The other cool thing about this is it's got the flexibility of being played from Z energy. So if you do happen to combo it with either Overflowing Confidence or your leader's auto, you have the ability to play it. It's not like just a dead energy card if you happen to Z charge it. That's pretty cool. And the count of Frieza armies in the deck, I believe, is currently 25. So you want to make sure, like, you know, roughly half the deck, in this case it's a little bit less than half the deck, is Frieza Army, so you can consistently hit off your top 3 combos. One more thing I want to talk about with the top 3 combos, again, with the ability of like Frieza overflowing with confidence. Let me pull this card up a little bit closer. So when this card attacks, look at the top 3 cards of your deck, use it to 1 yellow Frieza Army with its heals negated in a combo. So it says look at up to the top 3. What you really want to be doing in competitive gameplay with effects like this is look at the first card before looking at any other cards, and if you can combo with it, you probably just want to go ahead and do that, because let's say you look at all 3, just like immediately pick up all 3 top cards of your deck, and one of them is a Frieza Army. You have like a super combo, and worst case scenario, your secret rare. Now you're bottom decking a super combo and a secret rare, and you want to just be avoiding doing that. So the first card was the Frieza Army. You don't have to then bottom deck the remaining 2 cards because you didn't look at them. They just stay on top of your deck. So just a good tip there for anyone who wants to pick this deck up and play it a bit more proficiently. As for the rest of our 5 drops, though, we have Frieza Limitless Raw Power. I don't love this card. I'm only really including it because it's good against decks that have more consistent barrier removal. So in those matchups, I mean, it's a 1-of. You can simply just search with Return of the Army of Terror. So playing the 1-of just makes sense to me. You could, of course, like sideboard it too, but I'd rather just have it in my main board as another Frieza Army count, and again, it's just searchable in any matchup that you need it. And then we have 2 copies of Frieza Waiting to See. Okay, this card's pretty nuts because it's got the auto that every yellow deck wants to play with Sin Shenron, Cold-Hearted Shadow Dragon, built into the swapping archetype, and it's very cheap to play, takes much less setup than Sin Shenron. So I'll talk about that more later when we actually get to Sin Shenron, but this effect is still very, very good. It does operate a little bit differently, though, because this basically has to activate on the first card your opponent plays per turn, as where Sin, you can choose which battle cards to negate the skills of. So I guess I'll talk about it now. When you have this and Sin both on the board, Frieza is going to blank whatever the first card played is, and then Sin can be used later on, and it basically just prevents your opponent from like baiting out your Sin super easily, which is really, really good. And then we have 3 copies of the 8-drop. The only thing that sucks about it is like it doesn't impact like your opponent's floodgates. It's not like Frieza Divine Transformation where it punishes them for negating or anything, but it is a full board wipe ignoring barrier. That can't be you know, overstated. That is really, really good. All right, then we have 2 copies of Sorbet Devoted Support when you're a Z leader. It's a free negate. We have another one of these that we'll see later on. It's just really good defense. We have 4 copies of Riposte. Super cool that it is a Frieza Army, so you can technically combo it off the top 3 if you hit it. It just adds more consistency to the deck. 4 copies of Frieza's Call. This is pretty much just grabbing our 1-cost Frieza swap. I could maybe see like trimming this to 3 just because we have the 4 copies of Return of Army of Terror, so you have enough ways to search the 1-drop. And sometimes I'll find myself with like extra copies of Return of the Army of Terror in hand because my deck is just so consistent anyway that like I just didn't need to search anything off of it, and then maybe I'll use it for the Bean effect, but even that doesn't come up all that much. So yeah, maybe like Frieza's Call can be reduced, but it is nice too that it sets up Riposte and it sets up Cold-Hearted Shadow Dragon because it puts cards in your drop area. So maybe 4 copies is the right call. Then we have 3 copies of Vegito, of course, and this deck makes Z Energy super, super well, like way more than I thought it did on the initial video I did. So this card's super good in this deck. And then we do have 3 copies of Cold-Hearted Shadow Dragon. I could see bumping it down to 2, especially for those of us that maybe don't have 3 copies because it is somewhat of an expensive card to pick up. However, like I said, with the synergy with Waiting to See is super, super good, and it's just obviously a great yellow card. And the problem with this card in a lot of decks is that a lot of yellow decks don't set it up well because you don't put things in the drop early, you don't make a lot of Z Energy early. This deck actually does all those things, which makes it a very consistent like turn 2 counterplay if you want to go that route. We have 1 copy of the Cold Bullets we're allowed to play. Great thing about being a Frieza Army leader is you can play Cold Bullets. It's so good against Gohan Beast and the Golden Cooler, as well as like really high cost floodgates like the 4-drop 21 in the blue-green decks. Very, very good. 2 copies of Frieza Army Reinforcements. This is much lower than I typically ever play blocker negates, but I definitely wanted to conserve space in this deck. We actually have a lot of negates because of the Sorbet Devoted Support as well as the Meta Cooler we'll see later. So yeah, 2 feels okay here. 2 T-Blow, just got to be able to answer floodgates in this format. 1 copy of Power of Super Saiyan, of course we're going to play it. 1 copy of Secret ID. If you were to trim some other stuff and you feel more comfortable playing 2 Overwhelms, in which case I totally don't disagree with that, I could see playing 2 Secret ID because again, you do fuel a drop area quite well with a lot of these extra cards that we play. 3 copies of Krillin means we're playing our Gohan Piccolo SCR. I do think it's the best SCR for this deck. Golden Cooler is incredible, but it's really hard to play that card in a lot of decks that would just like purely tap out for it and be somewhat defenseless. Like, you don't have to be defenseless necessarily if you can get to your Z leader, but that costs energy, and that would mean you're gonna go into Golden Cooler on like turn 6, which is a little bit late. I think this SCR is just incredible. We have 2 copies of Metacooler for when we're on our Z leader, or maybe just have a Z battle card in play. 1 copy of Bergamo, very easy to proc this with Frieza cold-hearted behavior, among you know, several other things in the deck. And then 1 copy of Swift Retaliation Cooler. Definitely would side a second, maybe a third for some blue matchups like Gamma, but yeah, 1 I feel like is kind of all you need. Going on to the Z deck, we have 1 copy of Surmounting in case you're ever stuck at 6 life and need to go down to 5 in order to block or negate. We have our 1 Z leader. I could maybe see an argument for a second, but I think if you're going into a second Z leader, you're just in a very elongated game that you kind of don't want to be in. This isn't necessarily a yellow deck that benefits from the super long game, like maybe Golden Frieza does, or maybe even Trunks Vegeta does. I think you want to be like trying to end the game around like turn 5 if you can. So I don't think second Z leader is necessarily what this deck's looking for. Then we have our other new support cards, Sorbet, Emperor Subject, and Tagoma, Emperor Subject, just for the various scenarios you need them in. And then we have 1 copy of Gamma 2, Executing Justice. This is a card that I've been liking more and more. We are definitely in a very Floodgate-heavy format because that's one of the main things that's combating these aggro decks. So having this 1 cost, 1 Z energy cost card that punishes your opponent super hard for floodgating is actually really nice to get you back in the game. Like, for example, on a turn where you know you're going to basically stop a floodgate, like maybe a 17 Defending Friends or Android 14 Inorganic Horror, your opponent still activated a counter, in which case you draw a card, and now they pretty much have to negate your next attack. Maybe with a D magic, you'll draw another card, and maybe they'll go into a second floodgate after that. You'll have drawn 3 cards off that exchange, which is pretty good in some cases. Then we have the 1 copy of S3 Vegeta, Terrifying Agent of Destruction, just in case you ever need that active barrier removal. And then 1 copy of Oolong, because we are playing the Piccolo Gohan SCR. You want to be able to copy it for that game-ending push when the time calls. So yeah, that's the main deck, guys. Again, this deck has been, like, surprisingly impressive. I do very much like it. I think it's pretty good. Let me know what you think in the comments below. Thanks for watching. I'll see you in the next one.